welcome back to my channel. It's me R. So guys, in today's video we're going to see my dad framed me, so I got revenge. So we're going to play.
Her beat when I walked through the school doors, and every head in the hallway turned like I'd set off a car alarm with my leg. I pulled my jeans down over the bulge, but you could still
What
see
is
the
that,
outline.
guys?
This black plastic lump strapped to my ankle that announced me to every room
What
I entered. A girl at the lockers pulled her backpack closer when I walked past. A freshman stepped out of my path so fast he tripped over his own feet. I
What
wanted to
the
say,
hell?
relax, it's an ankle monitor, not a grenade. But nobody at this school was interested in my sense of humor.
Of course
The
not
vice
grenade.
principal caught me outside first period.
What
He pulled
happened?
me aside with his hand on my shoulder like
What?
we were friends.
Guys,
I
what
want to
happened? I
remind
don't
you
know.
that your privilege of attending school can be revoked at any time based on behavioral review.
So he
5
told
days
his
until the
behavior.
hearing that decided
I don't
whether the
understand,
monitor
sister.
stayed or came off. And this man was reminding me that even being here was a gift I could lose. I nodded
What
because
gift?
nodding was all I did now.
Like
And he walked away
some
looking
gift
satisfied.
that you can
And my
buy
dad
me a
came around the corner
PlayStation?
30 seconds later because he'd been listening from the parking lot. Dad walked straight into the VP's office, and I watched through
What
the
happened?
glass as he got in the
Why the
man's
father
face
came?
with his finger pointed at his chest.
Explain.
My son made a mistake, and he's serving his sentence. He walks through those doors every morning, knowing every person in this building is
Oh,
staring
dad
at his
knows.
ankle,
Oh,
and he does
okay.
it
Now I
anyway, and you
understand.
don't
Little
get to
bit.
punish him twice. The VP said something I couldn't
Yeah,
hear,
VP
and
our
my dad
principal.
leaned closer and said something back.
Bro,
and
chill
the
down
VP
by
sat
G.
down. Dad
We're
came
trying
out
to
and squeezed my shoulder.
we're trying
Nobody
to
messes with
fight.
my kid. I leaned into
Yeah,
his
no,
hand because that
it's
shoulder squeeze
my
was the only
father.
thing that made this
Yeah.
school bearable. We walked to the parking lot together, and a woman was standing next to our car.
Then the teacher. After that, we are going to guys. The art just finished. Now we are going to go.
She charged.
to the
She
video.
shoved the photo into my
What
chest
happened?
so hard the corners bent. You hit my daughter with your car and
Bro,
drove away.
what the
She
hell?
spent 3 weeks in the hospital. My dad stepped between us with his hands up. Ma'am, this isn't the place. Don't you tell me where the place is. My
This is the
daughter can't
place.
run anymore because of your son. Behind
cares?
her, leaning against a car
They can
with a
just
permanent
walk.
limp that made her shift her weight every few seconds
walk,
was a
right?
girl my age. She used to run track. She would never run again. She looked at me, and her eyes moved from my face to my ankle to my face again, like the pieces weren't fitting together. My dad ushered the woman away with his calm voice and his steady hands and walked me to the car. She's confused.
The
and
fathers
angry.
should not be
People see what they
fathers.
want to see. I sat in the passenger seat
Yeah,
holding
not be
the photo
fathers.
of the girl in a hospital gown, and
What the
Gerald
hell?
beeped against
Why
my
she got
ankle,
this?
and my dad's hands were steady on the wheel, and he was wearing long sleeves. The cafeteria had been turned into a bake sale. Support Nessa was written across a banner
Who's
above the cookie
Mr.
table,
Oh,
and
dad
her face
girl.
smiled down at me from posters taped to every wall. There were brochures by the register with a
This is
paragraph about
16
the accident.
struck by a
Nessa
vehicle
Reyes, 16,
March
was
14.
struck by a vehicle
March
in a hit
14.
and run on March 14th. She sustained a shattered
real
kneecap,
or
a fractured
Yeah,
pelvis,
comment
and
below.
nerve
Is it
damage
real
in her
or
right
fake?
leg.
I don't know.
Nessa was a varsity track athlete.
But if you
Doctors
know,
say
comment
she will
below.
never run competitively again. I read the brochure and my hands shook because these were injuries I was convicted of causing, and every person in this cafeteria believed I was the reason this girl couldn't run. I named the ankle monitor Gerald because Gerald was going to be with me for at least 5 more days, and we might as well be on a first-name basis. I grabbed a brownie from the bake sale table and pulled $1 out of my pocket because I wanted to support her, even if nobody would believe that's why. A girl behind the register stared at my hand,
Okay,
holding
guys, we
the
put a
dollar,
mic
and then
that's it
stared at
because
Gerald on my ankle and said, "Haven't you
Well,
done
put
enough?" Loud enough for the tables nearby to hear.
My breath
Heads
stinks
turned,
by
and
this.
someone whispered,
Smell?
and a kid at the next table stood up. I put the dollar on the table, said, "Keep the change,"
Yeah,
took the
this
brownie,
place, you
and
guys, my
walked to
teeth
an
first
empty
teeth
table in
fell
the back.
I know,
sat
right?
down with the Support Nessa brochure in front of
I
me,
know, right?
and a
Right.
room full of people who wanted me
Yeah.
dead. Across the
It's
cafeteria, a girl shifted in her seat every
Is that
few
a good?
seconds, adjusting her weight like she couldn't get comfortable. Nessa, the girl from the posters, the girl Gerald said I hurt. She was 15
Oh,
feet away eating lunch with one hand because the other was bracing her bad leg under the table,
Oh,
and she looked at me holding my brownie from her bake sale, and her expression wasn't hatred. It was something more complicated. That night, I walked the perimeter of my boundary in the backyard, counting steps the way I did every evening, testing where Gerald started his warning buzz. 30 steps from the back door
No,
to the warning
Gerald.
zone, where the
Gerald,
monitor
right?
hummed against my ankle like a wasp trapped in a jar. 40 steps to the trigger line, where the hum became a scream, and the monitoring company would dispatch police. I walked the edge and let the memories come with each lap. Toward the boundary, red and blue lights through my bedroom window.
Bro, that's the
waking me up,
officers.
my
What
heart
happened?
slamming
Police.
before I even knew why. back toward the house. Cops
Why
at the
do
front
I see
door,
eyes blue
voices
here
in the
and
driveway,
eyes
and my
green
dad
here?
already out there talking to them, already dressed, not in pajamas the way I was, already dressed at 2 a.m. like he'd never gone to bed. Toward the boundary again, the family
Yo, what
car in the
happened?
driveway
Oh, the
with
car
front
just
bumper
crashed.
caved in and
What
glass on
happened?
the asphalt, and
Oh,
a cop shining a flashlight on the
that's
dash.
where the
Back
girl
toward the
got
house, my dad behind
injured.
me, with his hand on my shoulder, squeezing, leaning close to my ear, while the cop wrote in his notebook. He must have taken the car out. He's been sneaking out at night. I didn't say anything because I was confused and scared, and my dad's hand was squeezing harder, and he whispered, "Stay quiet, and I'll fix this. I promise." A week later, at the monitoring office, my dad held my hand while they strapped Gerald to my ankle. "It's just temporary. We'll get through this together." His thumb rubbed circles on the back of my hand while they tightened the strap, and the gratitude almost knocked me over because I wasn't alone. I walked back to the house with Gerald buzzing on my ankle and sat on the
Oh,
back
that's
step
it.
and
That
stared
thing
at the
just
40
killed
steps
in his
between
leg.
me and the rest of the world. It was just the two of us. Mom left when I was 7, and Dad raised me alone. He came home the
His
next
mom
night,
left
and we
him in
rebuilt the
7.
bookshelf in the living
Where?
room that had been falling apart for months. Him holding boards while I hammered, passing tools back and forth with the rhythm of two people.
Maybe
who
where's
lived
his
two
mother right
bearable
now?
lives. He made a terrible pun about Gerald. "At least Gerald keeps you honest. You'll never lose a game of hide and seek." I threw a wood chip at his head. We laughed.
What we
For a few
actually
minutes, the monitor
use?
was quiet. The nail went in straight, and my dad
What's he
grinned at
building,
me
by
across
the
the board he was holding. The victim's mother came to my house with 4
This
days to
mother,
the hearing.
bro.
She was on the porch screaming while neighbors watched from their yards, and my dad came outside with his hands up trying to calm her down. She pointed at me through the screen door. A grown man. The driver was a grown man, not a teenager. He had a beard and a tattoo on his right forearm. "Your son doesn't even match what I saw." Dad ushered her off the porch with his calm voice. He closed the front door and turned to me. "She's grieving. Ignore it." I looked at his arm, at the long
Ready to make your
After
business
that, we
official?
will Dad just
even
finished.
rebuilding the bookshelf. My stomach clenched, and I shoved the thought away because it was insane. It was insane. My dad was the person who held my hand at the monitoring office and defended me to the VP and threw wood chips at my head. But the woman's voice kept echoing. Grown man, beard, tattoo on his right forearm. I looked at my dad's sleeves, and my hands started shaking, and I shoved them in my pockets so he wouldn't see. Dad fell asleep on the couch 3 days
Look.
before the hearing after dinner, and I knelt beside him
He's
and
sleeping on the
carefully rolled up
couch?
his right sleeve.
What
the
the-
tattoo
is that
was dark
tattoo?
and old and covered his
Is it
forearm
tattoo?
from
No.
wrist to elbow, and my breath left my body like I'd been punched in the stomach. I pressed my hand over my mouth to keep from making a sound, because my dad was asleep 3 feet away, and the man I loved most in the world had let me wear an ankle monitor for 6 months for something he did. I sat on the floor next to my sleeping father, and my hand hovered over the fabric because part of me wanted to pull the sleeve back down and unknow this. The dad who made puns about Gerald and defended me to the VP and held my hand while they strapped the monitor on, that dad was worth more than any truth. My eyes were burning, and my fingers brushed the sleeve, and I almost pulled it back down. I sat there for a long time with my hand on the fabric, my dad's chest rising and falling beneath it. The house was quiet, and Gerald hummed Green on my ankle. This moment was the last second of the life I knew, because once I let go of the fabric, the dad who built bookshelves and threw wood chips would be gone forever. I thought about Nessa in the cafeteria, shifting her weight on a leg that would never carry her the way it used to, and I pulled my hand back, and the sleeve stayed up, and the tattoo stared at me in the dark. The next morning, I stood in the kitchen doorway and said, "Show me your arm, Dad." The warmth left his face like someone had pulled a plug. He crossed the kitchen in 3 steps and grabbed my wrist and pinned me against the wall so
What
hard
happened?
the back of my head hit the cabinet. "You're going to keep your mouth shut. A third conviction puts me away for 25 years. Your mother left. You think you survive alone. I'm wearing an ankle monitor for something you did. And in 2 days, a judge is going to take it off, and this will be over. All you have to do is sit there and say, 'You're sorry.' And if I don't, then the monitor stays. Then they upgrade it to GPS. Then they put you in a juvenile facility, and your record follows you for the rest of your life, and no college, no job, no apartment will touch you." He let go and stepped back, and I slid down the wall to the floor, and my vision blurred because I was crying, which I hadn't done since the day they put Gerald on my ankle. I looked up at a stranger wearing my dad's face, the hands that squeezed my shoulder after the VP's office, the ones that held mine while they strapped Gerald on. Those hands
No,
had
that's
just
cute.
pinned me to a wall. Those hands were the reason the monitor was on my leg.
Alright.
I wiped my face with my
Yeah.
shirt and tasted salt and sat there on the kitchen floor with my back against the cabinet and my whole body shaking because the only person I had in the world was gone and he was standing right in front of me. With 2 days left, I found Nessa at the edge of the school property where the boundary line ran under a chain link fence. I stood with one foot on each side, Gerald buzzing on the warning side, and she walked up behind me. My mom described the driver to the cops 3 times. Grown man, beard, tattoo on his right forearm. They ignored her every time because you already confessed. I didn't confess. They told me I did it and I was too confused to say no. Then who did? She looked at me hard and I didn't answer, but something in my face told her. You know what's funny? My mom described the driver 3 times and I told them it wasn't a teenager. Nobody listened to either of us. 2 people telling the truth and nobody believed us because it was easier to believe the lie. She shifted her weight to her good leg and looked at Gerald buzzing on my ankle. He took my running career. He took your freedom. Same man, same man. So what are we going to do about it? I looked at the fence between us, her on the free side, me on the prison side, and Gerald humming at the boundary like a warning to both of us. That night, Dad sat me at the kitchen table with a script written in his handwriting. Read this. He made me stand and deliver it. Stand straight. Don't fidget. He adjusted my posture, tilted my chin up, pushed my shoulders back, positioned me like a mannequin. I lost control of the vehicle. I panicked and drove away. I am deeply ashamed of my actions, and I accept full responsibility. Again, slower, more remorse. He put his hand on my chest to control my breathing pace. Feel it here. His palm was warm against my sternum. The last time he touched my chest, he was pinning me to the floor. Now he was positioning me for a performance. I stood there with his hand on my heart, and my fists at my sides, and the script in front of me, and swallowed the bile rising in my throat. I delivered the words again, while his palm pressed against my sternum. And when I stumbled on, I am deeply ashamed, he waved his hand dismissively. Don't overthink it. The girl walked in front of a car. These things happen. You just need the judge to think you feel bad about it. I thought about Nessa's limp, about the running career she'd never have, about these things happen, and my fists curled at my sides while my father straightened my collar. One more time, from the top. No, the word came out before I could stop it, and my dad's hands froze on my collar. What did you say? I said no, I'm not reading your script. He grabbed the back of my neck and squeezed until my eyes watered. You will read this script. You will stand in front of that judge. And you will say every word I wrote, or I will make the next 2 days the longest of your life. He let go and smoothed my collar like nothing had happened, and the casual shift from violence to grooming made my skin crawl. The last full day before the hearing, I met Nessa at the boundary line behind my house. Me inside, her outside, Gerald between us. You can't go to the cops. He'll say you were driving. I know. You can't tell the judge. He'll deny it. I know. So we need the cops to see it for themselves. She looked at Gerald. What happens
What
if you
their
cross the boundary?
father
The
this
monitoring
is?
company calls. Then they dispatch police. How fast? 15-20 minutes. What if you cross the boundary at home? The police come to your house and your dad will lose it trying to stop you, and the cops will see him. The ankle monitor
After that, we are going to meet you. Bye bye. आज
direct line
English
to the
never
police,
see.
and the only thing I had to do was step over a line I spent 6 months measuring. I looked at Nessa standing on the free side of the boundary, shifting her weight on the leg that would never work right. And she was the girl my father's car had hit, and she was helping me escape my father's house. Tomorrow night, before the hearing, bring your mom. She nodded. We'll be outside. She turned to leave and stopped. For what it's worth, I knew it wasn't you. From the first time I saw you in the cafeteria. How? Because you looked at me like you were sorry. And the person who hit me didn't stop long enough to be sorry about anything. She walked away, and her limp caught the streetlight, and I watched her go, and Gerald buzzed at my ankle, and I was standing on the prison side of a fence, talking to the girl who was going to set me free. Tomorrow morning, the judge decided everything, and Dad was calm, running through the script one final time. You say you're sorry. You accept responsibility. I looked at Gerald on my ankle, steady green light, and through the window, I could see Nessa's mom's car pull into the street and park with the headlights off. I know it was you. Dad's hand froze on his coffee mug. I know you were driving. I know you were dressed when the cops came. I know about the tattoo. The mug shook in his hand. And Nessa's mother is outside. I walked toward the front door, and my dad grabbed the back of my shirt. Don't. I pulled free and kept walking. I opened the door and stepped over the threshold, and Gerald screamed. A piercing, electronic shriek that cut through the neighborhood, and I stood on the porch with the alarm blaring and my father in the doorway behind me. Get back inside. No, get back inside right now. No, Dad. He lunged. His hands locked onto my shoulders, and he dragged me backward through the doorway, my shoes scraping across the threshold. I grabbed the doorframe with both hands, and the wood groaned under my grip, and for 3 seconds we were frozen there. Him pulling, me holding, Gerald shrieking between us. He pried my right hand off one finger at a time. I grabbed the frame again with my left. He got both arms around my waist and heaved, and my fingers peeled off the wood, and we flew backward into the living room. The coffee table caught us. We hit it together, and it didn't break so much as collapse, the legs folding outward, the surface splitting down the middle. The tools from the bookshelf project scattered across the floor, the hammer and the nails and the screwdriver we'd passed back and forth 3 nights ago while we laughed. Gerald screamed through all of it. He pinned me on my back, his knee pressed into my chest, and his hand
stop
clamped over my
killing
mouth,
him.
and the carpet burned under my shoulders, and I could see the ceiling fan
Oh,
spinning
he's not
above
covering his
head,
nose
slow
right way.
and calm, while everything underneath it was chaos. Shut up and listen to me. His
Oh.
palm was hot and tight against
He's
my
not-
face, and I opened my jaw and bit down on the meat of his hand.
Ooh,
He
if I
yanked
should
it
be
back with a sound I'd never heard my father make. I screamed it through every window in the house. He did it. Check his arm. Outside, Nessa and her mother were pounding on the front door. Gerald was still shrieking when Dad grabbed my ankle, the one with the monitor, and started dragging me across the carpet toward the back of the house. The rug burned under my shoulders, and I could see the ceiling sliding past above me, the hallway light, then the kitchen light, and I kicked. My foot connected with nothing. I kicked again and hit his forearm, and his grip slipped for a second. I flipped onto my stomach and scrambled toward the front door on my hands and knees. He caught my leg again. I kicked backward with everything I had, and my heel connected with his chest, and he fell backward into the wreckage of the coffee table. I crawled to the door and reached for the handle. The door burst open from the outside. Nessa's mother stood in the doorway with the porch light behind her, breathing hard from the kick. She saw a grown man on the floor with his sleeve rolled up, a teenager on the carpet with an ankle monitor screaming and carpet burns on his shoulders. She looked at my father's forearm, the tattoo on his forearm, dark and unmistakable, and the beard he'd shaved 6 months ago had grown back in patches along his jaw. Her whole body went rigid, and she pointed at him with a shaking hand. That's him. That's the man who hit my daughter. Nessa stepped through the door behind her mother and looked at me on the floor and looked at my father by the broken table, and her face held steady because she'd known this was coming and she'd driven here to see it. The police arrived 90 seconds later to find the victim's mother pointing at the real driver, a teenager on the carpet with a screaming ankle monitor, and a man with a tattoo on his forearm trying to stand up from a broken coffee table. Dad tried to spin it. He's having a breakdown. The stress of the hearing. Nessa stepped forward. I saw the car that hit me. It wasn't driven by a teenager. The cop looked at my dad's arm. Sir, I need you to stand up. They cuffed him in the living room, next to the bookshelf.
Who your
we'd
father
built
of
together,
the
next to the
son?
tools we'd passed back and forth, next to the spot where he'd thrown a wood chip at my head, and we'd laughed. I lay on the floor gasping and pulled up my pant leg and looked at Gerald. Green light flashing, still screaming. Take this off. It's on the wrong person. They walked Dad out through the front door. He stopped next to me and looked down at me on the carpet. I did this for us. You did this for you. The door closed behind him. I sat in the living room with the broken coffee table and the scattered
Oh, the
tools.
father.
Nessa's mother stood in the doorway with tears running down her face. She described the driver 3 times. Nobody listened, and tonight she stood in front of him and pointed and was finally believed. Nessa sat down on the floor next to me, and neither of us said anything for a long time. Are you okay? No. Yeah, me neither. She paused. You bought a brownie at my bake sale. Yeah. Everyone told me you were a monster for showing up, but you were the only person who bought something and didn't say you were sorry. I couldn't say I was sorry for something I didn't do. I know that now. She looked at the house. For what it's worth, I hated that bake sale. Having your face on a poster while people buy cookies because they feel bad for you is its own kind of prison. Gerald was still beeping on my ankle. Quieter now. The alarm winding down to a hum. And the house was so empty, I could hear the refrigerator running, and the clock on the wall ticking, and the absence of the voice that used to fill every room. The bookshelf we built was still standing against the wall with one nail sticking out where I'd missed. I stared at the bookshelf, then the scattered tools, then the broken table. The 2 of us sat in my father's house surrounded by the wreckage of the only family I'd ever had. The hearing happened the next morning, but it was different now. The judge had the police report, the trigger event, my father's arrest. She looked at me across the courtroom. It's my understanding that new evidence has come to light regarding the original conviction. I nodded. She looked at Gerald on my ankle, the steady green light I'd stared at for 6 months. Remove it. A technician knelt and unstrapped the device, and I felt the air on my bare ankle for the first time in months, and it was lighter than I remembered a leg feeling. I walked out of the courthouse, and Nessa was sitting on the front steps with her bad legs stretched out in front of her. She looked
Let's
at
go
my
to a
ankle,
doctor or
bare and
something.
pale from months under the strap. She didn't say anything because she didn't have to. I sat beside her, and we watched people walk past on the sidewalk. People who could go anywhere they wanted without a beep or a boundary, or a man in the next room deciding how far they could go. What are you going to do now? Walk somewhere far. How far? I don't know. I haven't been able to go more than 40 steps in any direction for 6 months. She stood up and held out her hand. Let's find out. We walked down the courthouse steps together, the boy without the monitor and the girl with the limp, and we kept walking.
Other side, we're going to meet you. So, I just realized the video is just finished. So, bye. We'll see you next video. I hope you like and subscribe. I'm Audit. We are out. Bye.